Welcome everyone this morning to our online virtual workshop on facing adversity and how we can use a bit of science of psychology and human behaviour to build our resilience, keep ourselves well, with the purpose not only of coping as best we can with the challenges that we're facing in this new and rather uncertain world, but also to put us in the best stead to be able to care for the others in our lives. So our families, our staff, our colleagues, and our community at large. My name's Ellen Jackson. If you don't know me, I am a local workplace and positive psychologist, and positive psychology is the science of helping individuals and our institutions, our workplaces, schools, etc., to thrive and to flourish. And one of the, that's at all stages of life, but at the moment it's really helping us to use that science, use that knowledge to be able to thrive and flourish as best we can in a time of uncertainty and change. The aim of positive psychology is really a form of preventative mental health. So if we're able to give more and more people the skills that they need to stay resilient and operating at their best all of the time, it means that when things become challenging, as they are for us at the moment, then we are more resilient, we're more prepared, and we're psychologically in a better place to be able to handle those challenges. So today's workshop, I'm going to share some content with you. I have two parts to it really. The first part is understanding your brain so that we can be a little more in the driver's seat when it comes to managing the situation that we're in. Our brains drive our behaviour, and it's when, having knowledge about our brain, how it does drive our behaviour, really gives us power. It allows us to be in the driver's seat and to be able to take action and be a little less at the whim of our emotions and the whim of our environment, the news feeds that we're getting constantly bombarded with, other people's anxiety and worry. It's a self-management tool, really. So I'm going to talk you through a bit about what happens in the brain when we are faced with adversity and uncertainty and the challenges we're facing right now. And then I'm going to give you some really simple, straightforward tips, the sorts of things that we should all be doing every day. They're free and they're easy, and they are the simple things that we can do just to keep ourselves in emotionally tip-top shape. So there's 5 of them. They're very straightforward. I'll talk you through those as well. So the other thing I wanted to say that's really important here, this is a webinar. So although we can't be in the same room at the moment, although, we're probably scattered all around town in different rooms, sitting perhaps on our own, this is still an opportunity for interaction, for conversation. We have a chat function here, so feel free to shoot questions through to me at any stage, or if anything needs clarification or you'd like to know more, I will do my best to answer those in the moment as they pop up. And if I can't get to them, then I will hang around a little at the end and answer them for you then. So please make use of the chat function. It makes it a lot easier for me if I feel like I'm having interaction with people. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and just take you through some slides here. Let's start. Let's hope this works. Good morning. Oh, that's Catherine, I think. Here we are, share. And I'll go from beginning. Okay, so I hope you can see that. I can't actually, I just realised I can't see the chat when you see this. So I think it might bleep at me when the chat comes up or when somebody logs a question. So I might just skip in and out of the slides. But hopefully you can see this first slide, which is really just our title slide. I'm going to skip forward to the next one, which is just understanding your brain. So this is about staying in the driver's seat, as I mentioned. Our brain drives our behaviour. It's there to, manage absolutely everything we do, from our emotions to our thoughts to our daily activity, and then obviously all of the physiological stuff. And because we're facing uncertainty, it's really important to understand what your brain does in response to uncertainty. At the moment, we're facing a lot of really strange behaviour. We're facing some illogical behaviour. We're seeing some stuff, panic buying in supermarkets and other things that we well, at least some of us wonder why that's happening. And then, of course, most of us, even the most stoic and calm and ordinarily resilient people, would still be feeling heightened anxiety right now. Our brains might be seeking lots of information. We might be struggling perhaps with some of the mood that that's bringing. It might be having an impact on our sleep, on our relationships. It might be causing us to be a bit more irritable, a bit more angry. And that's all just a very normal response to the situation we're facing, because our brain likes things to be ordinary and predictable. It likes routine, it likes rhythm, because that's how we make sense of the world. So when we're facing a whole lot of uncertainty, when that ordinary prediction, and at a basic level, that looks like being able to, or just knowing that, we get up in the morning and most of us get up, have a shower, have breakfast, get ready for work, and off we go. And that's what the day looks like. We watch footy on Friday nights, and we know that we have kids basketball on Saturdays, and we know that, life has an element of prediction. It has an element of routine, and that is safe for your brain. Your brain's going, right, I know what's coming next. I can analyze the information that I've got here, and if I need to switch things up, I can, because I know what's predictable and I know what's routine. But of course, if we're in a situation where we don't necessarily have that predictability, not sure what's going to happen, both to our businesses, to our economy, to our families and our well-being, just the spread and progression of the COVID-19 virus, we don't know what's going to happen, and we're constantly being bombarded with information and data and news reports. And I listened into the news this morning, and we had just, now that we've sort of moved on a little bit from the data around number of cases and the impact both here in Australia and globally, we're starting now, I can see movement towards conversation about the broader impact. So there was conversation this morning about the organisations having to lay off staff, about the impact for industries on the shutdown of both, distribution channels and travel and transport, and, things coming to a grinding halt, and what that would mean for us later on. When we're constantly being exposed to all of this, our brain's going, what, who, when, where, unsafe, unsafe, unsafe. I'm not sure what's going on. It's a really normal response, but it's not always a helpful response. It's not always good for our emotions and our ability to maintain perspective and our calm if we're constantly being triggered in these different ways. And what we understand, or what we know, is that we need to find ways to manage that. Yeah, it's really important, even just to understand what's going on, that understanding is one part, then finding a way to manage it is the next step. And with the information, the input that's coming in, and your brain getting uncertain, what tends to happen, there's a couple of things that tend to happen. That's what the way we behave, it's driving our behaviour. And there's a couple of things that happen. First is we do seek more information. So we're seeking closure. I'm getting closure for some reason. Why am I getting an echo? Sorry, people. If you get that echo. That's new. Yeah, I might just turn my speaker off, see if that helps. That might help. Okay, apologies. Okay, so what is happening when we are when we're getting all of this input and our brain's going, I don't know what's going on, I'm not quite sure what to think, I'm not quite sure how to kind of process this, it raises our stress level, it raises our anxiety, and there's a couple of kind of phenomenons that occur, and one of those is what's called cognitive closure. So we start seeking ways to fill in the gaps. We start looking for information that is going to help us to calm things down, to make us feel safer, to make us feel certain. Our brain doesn't like this uncertainty. And cognitive closure manifests in perhaps lots of information seeking. So it might be that you are constantly checking news, constantly checking social media, You might be talking to people a lot, lots of conversations about what's going on and what that means. You're looking for people's input, you're looking for people's decisions. We can see this playing out in our community, just this heightened level of conversation and awareness. And that's just your brain trying to fill in the gaps. It's trying to make sense of what's going on, and it's trying to look for what we call cognitive closure, to be able to say, right, okay, I know what's going to happen now. Now, the problem is we don't know what's going to happen at the moment. We don't know how this illness is going to progress. We don't know what's going to happen in terms of the impacts on the economy, on our businesses. And so that's a really uncomfortable place to be. And it drives this kind of hypervigilance, really, this constant checking, this constant looking for information. So that's one. I think I've got a slide for this. Here we go. So that's called need for closure and control, cognitive closure. We're looking for information. There's also a kind of a personal control that happens in here. So some of the things that you might see is, when we're feeling like we're out of control in one part of our life, a need for control pops up elsewhere. Again, very normal human response. So you might notice that you are becoming a bit more focused, even to the kind of obsessive point about, say, the financials of your business. So obsessing over where the money is, where it's going, what you're spending. Again, a normal response, but it's just recognizing that, when we get really, down some rabbit warrens around things like that, it could just be our brain really looking for a bit of need for closure. I need to gain control in something in my life because there's so much uncertainty around me. Other people might find that they are cleaning a lot. My house is very clean, pretty clean and tidy at the moment, because it's like, there's so much I can't control. I can't control the fact that my clients are cancelling face-to-face workshops, or I don't know what's going to happen in terms of income, or I don't know what's going to happen in terms of our daily life, our daily activity, where my kids are going to be at school after the school holidays. So what can I control? Well, there's a bit of a tendency to control, for me anyway, what happens at home. So, cleaning, tidying, putting things away, keeping on top of that routine so that I can feel that semblance of control. Other people, it will happen in different ways. You might get really particular about kids' bedtime or household routines, for example. You might get really particular about another facet of your business, because that's still in your control. So that's one of the things that your brain is doing while we're kind of awash in this uncertainty. The second thing that your brain does is what's called our negativity bias. So we're all wired up to see problems, challenges, and struggles ahead of opportunities and the positives in life. We will be drawn and have more of an emotional response to negative news, for example, or anything that helps us or creates a feeling of threat for us. And this is really important. This keeps us safe. This is the thing that helps us to be vigilant when we cross the road and look out for cars. Our brain is wired up to keep us safe. But if we are constantly seeing the negatives and the threats and all of the challenges ahead of the possibilities and the opportunities and the positives that might be coming from a situation, and I know it feels weird to talk about the positives right now, but there can be positives depending on how we frame these things up, then, that ends up being a pretty unhelpful place to be in terms of your psychological well-being. It ends up being a pretty stressful place to be. And because we have more of an emotional response to negative news and negative information than we do positive, it's kind of keeping us, again, hypervigilant and agitated, which is not necessarily good for us in the short term or indeed in the longer term. So that's a couple of the things that are going on there in our brain, this need for closure and control. People trying to panic buy at the supermarket, the great toilet paper drama. When we look at this in terms of observing human behaviour and trying to understand, that is, I can't control what's going to happen to my family or to my business or to my work or to my livelihood, but I can control whether or not we've got enough food in the house. And that's driving that need to go out there and, stockpile. The negativity bias, as soon as there's some mention of the possible potential need for people to be at home for longer periods, and I think the news article that precipitated a lot of this was a suggestion that we stock up for a couple of extra days maybe. And of course our brains, the way they're wired up, suddenly went, oh, panic, fear, what to stock up for a couple of days? Well, I'll just make sure that I stock up with absolutely everything I could possibly need for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or a month or more. So you can see when we step back, you can see how some of these human behaviors, natural responses from our brain is driving the behavior that we're seeing. Okay, so what I would like you to have a think about is, if you're observing your own behaviour, if you are observing your own thoughts and your own feelings, if you are worrying a lot at the moment, and most of us are worried to some extent, but if you are finding that it's starting to have an impact on your sleep, it's starting to have an impact on your mood, if you are more irritable, if you are short-tempered, if you are just feeling stressed and agitated, then ask yourself this: is this helping me? Because we do have choice and control in these situations. We do have options here. We're not entirely beholden to our brain and our wiring and our automatic responses. Human beings are also highly creative. We're also highly capable of managing this stuff. We just need to know how. So particularly for people who are worrying, if you're finding that you're worrying, or people who are around you are worrying, again, it's a normal response. It's your brain trying to get control. It's trying to get that cognitive closure that I mentioned. It's trying to be able to fill in the gaps. And some of us do it more than others, just naturally, depending on our personalities. And sometimes the people around us, so it can be a little bit catching. And if we are worrying fairly consistently, somewhere deep down we tend to believe that if I keep thinking this over and over, I'm going to come up with a plan, I'm going to come up with a solution, and that kind of perpetuates worry. If I just keep ruminating on this, or I just keep thinking about it, somehow the answer is going to come to me. And that's your brain looking for these answers, looking for these closure. But of course, it doesn't help. Those of us who have ever been caught in a worrying loop knows that that isn't what tends to happen. We don't tend to make a breakthrough that answers all of the questions. It doesn't cure the uncertainty. We're just seeking a sense of control. And the problem is that more and more likely, instead of coming up with a solution, we actually get more and more muddled and more stressed. And as a consequence, we see fewer, and fewer problems. More and more problems, fewer and fewer solutions. So we can get ourselves into a kind of spiral of negativity, which ultimately becomes helplessness. And that's a key feature of depression. So this is about awareness. It's about catching yourself, paying attention to your behavior, paying attention to your thoughts, and paying attention to your feelings, and asking yourself, is what I'm doing right now helping me? If I'm obsessively listening to the news and it's making me more and more agitated, is that helping me? Well, the answer is probably no. Is ruminating or worrying or having constant conversations with people about what's stressing you out, is it actually working me or getting me closer to a solution? Or is it just keeping me agitated? These are the sorts of questions we need to be asking ourselves, because if the answer is no, I think I'm just making this worse for myself. Or if I think, this behavior of constantly just sitting there, scrolling my phone, constantly looking for updates, if that's not helping you, and it's probably not, then, what are you going to do about it? Yeah. So there's a point at which we can intervene in that potentially negative spiral and stop it before it gets any worse. Now, I'm just going to check the chat here because I can't see anything. Just I pause before I go on to some practical tips and just see if I've got any, oops, that's not the right thing. Any questions? Excuse the pause. No, I can't see. I can't see where it's gone. Here we are. Try this. There we go. No, I've got people saying great idea. Thank you. No worries. Hi again. If you couldn't, I don't know if you can even see me. I haven't used this particular platform before, so I don't know if you can ordinarily see me when the screen share is up. But assuming there's no questions at the moment, I'm going to go right back to it, and I'll talk you through some of the And can see you. Oh, okay. So yes, so you can see me. Okay, good. That's good to know. Okay, I'll go back to our slides and we'll take you through the next little. Where did we get to? Is this helping me? From current slide. Okay. So yeah, so just asking yourself, is this helping me? Is this vigilant behaviour? Is my constant conversation? Is my worrying? Is my news exposure? How am I feeling? Check in with yourself. How am I feeling? Am I feeling stressed or agitated? Am I overthinking? Am I worrying? Because it's your brain driving that. There's nothing we can do about these external circumstances. And if it's not, then it's time to do something about it. Okay. This is another little model that I just wanted to take you through because this helps us in the process of taking action. So going from observation of what's going on, what's stressing me out, what am I doing that's unhelpful, to what can I do about it. And this is a little model called the circle of influence and the circle of concern. And if you've seen me speak before, you might have seen me talk through this one because it's one of my favourites personally in order to conceptualise some of what we can do. And I know it's generally very well received by the people that I share it with as well. So this originally came from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, but the concepts are very much psychological concepts that we work with on a regular basis as well. So if you imagine our 2 circles there, the outer circle we call the circle of concern, and these are the things in our lives that have an impact on us, but we can do absolutely nothing about them. So the classic example that I use when I'm talking about this usually is the weather. The weather has an impact on our mood, the weather has an impact on our behaviour, the weather has an impact on our thoughts and our feelings, how we dress, what we might take with us, our weekend activity plans, all sorts of things are affected by it. But of course, the weather is something that we can do absolutely nothing about. And it's very much the same with our current circumstances and COVID-19. We can't control the spread of this illness. We can't control government decisions. We can't control the actions of other people that have an impact on us, whether that's what they're doing in the supermarkets or their own worries or the fact that they're not isolating when you think they should be isolating. We can't control any of that. We have absolutely no control as much as we'd like to. And we can, what tends to happen is that we will get angry or we will get frustrated or we will try to control other people's behaviour by giving them our opinion. And that's, again, an attempt to exert control over something that we can't control. But ultimately, we can't change any of that. We can't control other people's behaviour, not even our own children, sadly, really, when it comes down to it. So they're things that are inside in that outer circle of concern, the things that we have an impact on us, but we can do nothing about them. In the inner circle is our circle of influence. These are the things that we can do something about. And ultimately, what it comes down to is we can control our own thoughts and our mindset and our actions. And that's about all we can control. So if we think about the situation we're in at the moment with a whole lot of uncertainty, we can try those things that I mentioned before. We can get angry, we can get frustrated, we can try and boss other people around, we can panic buy in the supermarket, we can do all of those sorts of things. It's not going to change anything that happens to us, but we can change how we feel about those things. And that's a much better place, not only for our psychological well-being and our emotional resilience, but it's also a much better place for our ability then to start taking control. Yeah. So we're far less passive. If you spend a lot of time and a lot of your focus in that outer circle, that circle of concern where we have no power or influence, it's a very passive, reactive place to be. It's a far more emotional place to be. It's a far more stressful place to be. If we can start to focus our attention, if we can start to think about, well, I can't control any of that, but what can I change here? That's a far more proactive, far more positive, and far more empowering place to be. It's a much more resilient place. It's a better place for our psychological well-being. So to give you some examples there, there's this morning, for example, listening to the news, realising that as I listened to conversations about the economic impacts and industry shutdowns, and I could feel myself, getting distressed for the individuals who are losing their jobs, getting distressed for our local community and what the impact would be, projecting forward to all of this, oh, this is going to be terrible, this is going to be awful, what can we do about it? And, I could feel a thought response, or I noticed a thought response. I could feel an emotional response. And I acknowledged at that point, because I was noticing it, that, I can't change any of that at this point in time. That's all beyond my control. But me getting agitated and upset about it isn't going to help. It's not going to help me. It's not going to help my family. So I made a decision, right, I'm going to limit the amount of news I'm listening to, because this is all I'm going to get from the news. It's not going to help me. So that comes down to my action. What's in my circle of influence? I can stop listening to the news. I can stop checking social media. And I can start doing some of the things that I'll talk about in a moment that keep us happy and well. So how we frame things up in our own minds and just concentrating on what are the things I can do something about. I can switch things off. I can stop paying attention. I can think differently. I can, in fact, train my brain to look for the positives in this situation. One of the positives that we might have, and these are just examples because it's going to be up to individuals to determine what works for me. What are the things that, are appealing to me or that are going to keep me feeling happier in this circumstance. So, some of the options are starting to look at, and we're starting to see this happen already, is how we might pivot our businesses. Yeah, so we've got cafes who are providing window pickups, which I think is a wonderful idea. We've got gatherings like this, taking place remotely and via virtual technology. We've got people who are offering to help their neighbours or others who perhaps can't get to the shops. We can, see we've got proposals to put a candle on your porch and play the last post on Anzac Day because our Anzac Day services are being cancelled. So there's a lot of creativity we can start to see coming through, and that's because people are starting to reframe, or they're using this strategy of reframing, I can't do anything about the fact that Anzac Day services have been cancelled, and that's a really upsetting thing to me, but what can I do? What might we do differently? And when we start to focus on that inner circle, on that, our thoughts and our mindset and the actions that we can take, then we start to become more creative and more innovative, and we start to see solutions rather than just the problems. So I hope that's making sense. Again, hard to know because I can't see you, but I'm going to assume it is, unless you tell me otherwise, in which case you can ask me a question or ask me to rephrase it somehow. Okay, so what's the time? It's 10 o'clock. We've got 15 minutes. So I'm going to use the last 15 minutes to talk you through some of the practical strategies that we can do. Some of these things that sit in this inner circle that we know work to reduce stress and increase our psychological well-being and our resilience. So the first of those, there's 5 of them, 5 simple steps. And the first of those is mindfulness. Now, when I talk about mindfulness, I'm not necessarily talking about sitting in the lotus pose in position and going om. This is not necessarily deep and long meditation. This is what we call everyday mindfulness. And mindfulness is really just the practice of stopping your brain from spiraling off into that what's going to happen kind of panic and uncertainty response. Yep, it's bringing it back to the present moment. So when we ruminate on the past or start to worry about the future, our brain is perceiving threat in that moment, that negativity bias. It's starting to go, oh my God, this is bad, this is scary, this is, a worry, what am I going to do about it? And it activates what's called our sympathetic nervous system. So that is the system in your body that is designed, it's your fight or flight response, so it's designed to keep you safe. And it does, like I said earlier, it does when it comes to crossing the road and things like that. We want that to kick in so that we stay safe. But when it comes to worry and rumination, all it does is it activates that response, which is a physiological response as much as it is an emotional response. So it has a hormonal response. It kicks in hormones like cortisol and adrenaline, start to pump through your system. Your blood goes to your large body, large muscle groups in order to help you to flee, because your brain doesn't know the difference between, worry about the future and an immediate threat. So hormonal changes, we have physiological changes like the high muscle groups or big muscle groups, blood going to those. Our heart beats faster. We tend to breathe more quickly. We might sweat, and we most likely have an emotional response as well, which for some people might be shutting down, and for other people it might be flaring up. So normal system, it's there to keep us safe. If we're in that heightened state all the time, we start to shut down in terms of our creativity and our problem solving. We get very caught up in it, and we can end up in that negative spiral, again, into that loop of despair and hopelessness, which is not good for us. That is where depression and anxiety live, in that space, and this is what we're trying to avoid. So to deactivate it, what's great about this is to deactivate that, or to enact the opposite response. So that's our parasympathetic or our stress response. The opposite response is our relaxation response. So, sorry, it's not the detail. It's our relaxation response. So the easiest way to activate our relaxation response and to get the whole system to calm down, including your mind, is just 5 deep breaths. Yeah, something that we can all do anywhere at any time. It's just 5 simple deep breaths, and that automatically calms everything down, and it helps you to bring your mind back to the present moment. So again, the noticing, am I stressed? Am I agitated? That's going to feel different for everybody. For some of us, it's clenched jaw. It might be your shoulders up around your ears. You might get headaches, clenched fists, physiological agitation, emotion, mood, outbursts, whatever it might be. Pay attention. That's stress. Yeah. If you notice it in yourself and you ask yourself, is this helping me? Probably not. Then it's time to activate the opposite system, which is this parasympathetic nervous system, this relaxation response. 5 deep breaths will do it. And the more we do that and kind of incorporate that into our daily lives, even just the noticing and then the calming, the more it becomes habit, the more we're able to maintain a greater sense of calm over our day. So this is skills for life stuff, obviously useful right now, but useful at all points in our lives. So that's our first thing, is just being a little present in the moment, being mindful, trying to calm your mind down. The 5 deep breaths, and then it's sort of saying, always asking that question, is this helping me? Is there something else I can do? Which might be starting to look at some of these sorts of activities. So our next one is rest. Yeah. So rest is good. We probably know that intuitively, and yet particularly when times are stressful or busy, we tend to do the opposite. We keep ourselves in a highly agitated state. We keep ourselves in a highly active state. You might be sitting around watching the news until too late at night and not going to bed. You might be distracting yourself with Netflix or other things, or not going to bed because it's easier than allowing your brain to keep going over and over and over what's going on. Paying attention. Is that helping you? The thing we know about sleep is that it is really important. We've learned a huge amount about sleep in the last 10 or 15 years with the advent of technology that allows us to see what's going on in our brains when people are sleeping. And what we know is that it is vital for things like our learning and our memory, our ability to solve problems, our ability to innovate and to create if we need to. If it's about pivoting our businesses right now, it's, we need the rest, we need the brain space to be able to do that. So really important for learning and memory. It's vital for immunity. So when we sleep, there's a protein that's produced in our body that helps reduce inflammation and increase our immunity. So, when we're looking at health concerns, getting good sleep and being able to boost our immunity the best way and the simplest way we can is obviously really, really useful. It's important for performance. If you're going to be at your best, if you're going to be at your most resilient, if you're going to be able to help the people who need your help, whether it's just in managing their own emotions or, if you're facing how am I going to juggle my work with having my children at home potentially, if that's what happens, you need to be at your best, and sleep is really important for you to be able to do that. It's also really important for your mood. Yeah, so any of us who have been through periods of sleep deprivation or even just days when we've been really sleep deprived, your ability to focus on your mood, to manage your mood and to manage yourself, to manage your mind is really, really impaired. We're just not at our best when we're tired. We will be more reactive. We will be more likely to worry. We'll be more likely to feel stress, and we're less likely to notice when that's happening and then to be able to enact things in order to calm everything down again. So ideally, the average human needs 7.5 to 8 hours sleep per day, but there's individual variation in that. So, you might be someone who needs a little less sleep. You might be someone who needs a little more. It's about, again, paying attention and working out whether or not you are getting adequate sleep for you to be feeling at your best and being able to do all of the things that you need to be able to do right now. If you have trouble with sleep, the Sleep Foundation, and I think we'll probably have the capacity to send out some links for some of these extra resources at some stage, but I can certainly email them to people if people are interested. The Sleep Health Foundation has fantastic resources for people who struggle with sleep, just to fill in some gaps there in your knowledge or give you some strategies or tips. The other thing I always recommend is just getting all primary school on yourself, working out how much sleep you need to really be able to operate at your best, and set yourself a bedtime. And then just know that if there's a few things that you need to do prior to getting to bed at night, the nightly routine, just make sure you're factoring in the time to do that. Don't leave that until, say, 11 o'clock at night and then spend an hour doing that stuff and then getting to bed at midnight. If you know that you need 8 hours sleep a night and you have to be up at 6, then, start getting ready for bed so that you are in a position to get to sleep, say, at 10 o'clock. It's a bit of routine and discipline, which again, really important in times when perhaps a lot of our other routine has gone out the window. Okay, so that's sleep. The third one that is vital, and again, it's free and it's easy, is just to maintain a little bit of exercise and some outdoor time. When I talk about exercise, I don't necessarily, often when we talk about exercise, we think, oh my goodness, that's the gym or it's running or it's something, at a maximum capacity. When we're talking about a psychological health, it doesn't need to be highly vigorous exercise unless that's your thing already. So if you're already running and doing, high level cardiovascular exercise on a routine basis, and that helps your mental health, fantastic, keep doing it. Often when we're stressed, this is the time when we stop doing these sorts of things. So it's really important to remind yourself of how critical it is to keep that up. If more rigorous exercise is not part of your daily strategy, or if, like most of us, at the moment you are not doing the things that you might ordinarily do, then this is about maintaining just a little bit of movement. So don't think of it as exercise, just think of it as movement. So I am a big advocate of what I call the wellbeing walk, which can just be 10 minutes, take the dog for a walk, to get outside. There is nothing stopping us at the moment from getting outdoors. We've got glorious autumn weather at the moment. So take short walks, take the kids for a bike ride, take the dog for a walk, get out and garden, do whatever you can to move your body, because when we move our bodies, it's a good distraction. It helps us to sleep better. So if we've had some exercise during the day, it's going to improve our sleep. It helps us to keep our minds a little calmer. There's something that's almost meditative, that kind of rhythmic, the walking or the running or whatever it might be, cycling, that's a mindful practice in itself. So it helps to calm the mind, calm that stress response. And the other thing that's really interesting is it actually helps with our creativity. So there's been some really interesting work done out of Stanford University looking at getting people to exercise, just gentle exercise, just walking, I think was the case in this. So it was walking and then getting them to solve some problems, little cognitive problems. And they found that those people who walked, even for short periods, say 10, 15 minutes, were better able at the end of that walk to answer these cognitive problems. So we're starting to see that there's something, we don't know what the mechanism is, but there's something in the action of walking that helps to boost our ability to solve problems. So if we want to be in peak condition right now, in order to be able to do what we need to pivot our businesses or to support our family and friends or to solve other problems that are facing us, then we need to be enacting some of this stuff in order to give ourselves the best chance to do that. So just moving your body to calm your mind and improve your creativity. Two more really quick ones. One of them is just building on past successes. So often when we find ourselves in these situations, it's really difficult to kind of see past the problem right now. But most of us have gone through tough times before. Yeah, anyone in small business has had periods where it's been challenging and difficult. Most of us have had personal challenges in our lives to different extents. And if we reflect on those, we can start to draw on the resilience that got us through those moments. We can start to remind ourselves that we are capable and adaptable. And even if we don't have a whole lot of control of that stuff in the outer circle, we've always got control of that stuff in the inner circle, and we've done that before. So take some time to review, think back over your life. What have I done in the past that I've survived or even thrived as a result of, even if it felt really challenging in that particular moment? Brainstorm what you've done and what you can do. So make this a problem solving exercise. Make a list. What are the things I'm going to do right now to help me get through this, stay resilient, and maybe even come out of it a little bit stronger at the other end? And then take action on those things. So if it's just a well-being strategy, fantastic. That's obviously what I'm advocating for here. Make a list of the things that you are going to do, whether it's the walking, whether it's improving your sleep, whether it's social connection, which I'll talk about in a moment, whether it is problem solving, some of the strategies that you might need to implement with your business or your work right now. Whatever it is, make a list, have a brainstorm, and then start taking action on it. Motivation comes from action, and that becomes a positive spiral. If it's the reverse of that negative spiral that results as a consequence of stress and focusing on what we can't control, focusing on what we can control and starting to act on it creates a positive spiral of success and further motivation, further action. It goes upwards and upwards. And because we're almost out of time, the final one I've got for you is just about connecting and giving back. Now, we're in a situation where we've been encouraged to keep ourselves socially distant, and a lot of the activities that we might ordinarily engage in, from family and social activities through to business networking, through to learning, whatever it might be, they've all been cancelled. So human beings really need connection with each other to reduce isolation, to maintain our well-being, to keep resilient. We draw on the support, the care, just the conversations that we have from others. And at the moment, we're kind of being told not to do that, which in a way is unhelpful. But we need to be creative and think about how we can still do it. Can we use technology to maintain that connection? Can we use this as an opportunity to call the people that we haven't had a chance to call for some time, or voice that I really should have a conversation with this person or that person, whether that's a work conversation or a personal conversation? So again, being proactive about that now, saying, right, this is an opportunity for me to boost my well-being, make those connections, have those conversations that I've been meaning to have. And the other thing we know about connecting, and this might be with the individuals in your lives or it might be with your community at large, is that when we connect with other people and a bit of a sense of greater purpose. So this is where helping comes in. When sense of meaning and purpose, in psychological terms at least, is usually a sense of contributing to something that's bigger than ourselves. So it drives volunteering behaviour, it drives social justice behaviour. It's making a contribution to something that's bigger than me, which in our case, we have a wonderful opportunity to do that in our local community. And so anything that you can do that is going to connect you to other people, but also give you that sense of service, that sense of giving back. We know from a lot of the positive psychological research in the last 10 years or so is that when people have that sense of purpose, it promotes resilience. It gets us out of our own heads thinking about other people. It gives us perspective often, because when we see people who are perhaps doing it tougher than we are, we start to realise, that our headspace has been unhelpful. We've been focused in the wrong place, and that we need to be looking at what's going on outside of ourselves and our immediate worries. And all of that just promotes a sense of resilience and gets us back on that positive spiral. So looking for opportunities, again, this is action oriented. It's looking at what's in that inner circle. How can I connect with other people? How can I give back? How can I apply a sense of purpose or engage in a sense of purpose in my life for my well-being and obviously the well-being of our community at large? So I'm going to flick back to the questions and the video. I'll stop sharing here. If anyone's got any questions at any time, I don't know how to get back to that. Anyway, I'm just going to keep talking to you. We'll find it. If anyone's got any questions or, they'd like to kind of drill down on any of this stuff, I'm available. I can hang around for a little bit now, or we can do it over webinar, or I'm available through my email address, which is just ellenjackson@potential.com.au, or I'm sure that Jodie and Leah and the team at Commerce Ballarat would be more than helpful to, or more than happy to kind of pass that stuff on. We'll pass some links to some of this information through as well. Yes, I've got Leah here nodding at me, smiling. So we'll pass some links through as well for further information for anyone who's interested. And I just encourage you, human beings are adaptable. We are incredibly creative, adaptable people. And even though times are tough at the moment, we are going to all emerge from this, hopefully fitter and stronger. Business might be difficult for a while, but if we can start to focus this on where are the opportunities here for me, we're all going to be better off as a result. So thank you all very much for your time, and good luck.